Really not much of a surprise here. The only thing we were really looking at was the fact that the storm was still a Category 4.
Yeah.
We were curious to see if it was going to weaken, fingers crossed, hoping it did not. It didn't have enough time for any type of shear or land interaction to weaken this system, so we're still looking at a Category 4 with winds of 155.
And other than that, really just the chat kind of confirming what we've been saying for over a half hour now, is that portions of Southwest Florida are now having to deal with that eye wall slowly pushing onshore. You and I were just taking a look at the map. This is going to include places you and I love all the way throughout the North Captiva Island.
Yeah, let's start off to the north, because right here is the beginning of that eye wall. This is a location where those most damaging winds are, 155. We failed to mention here in the last couple of minutes, gusting to 200 miles per hour. And while it looks like your average thunderstorm, because we have the static image of the eye wall, this is Blind Pass. You've got Bowman's Beach there, and as you move up Captiva, it's South Seas Resort, and it's right there on the edge of the most damaging winds to come on the leading edge of Hurricane Ian. Let's go ahead and put that into motion, and you can kind of get an idea of how fast that this eye wall is whipping around. And you can see those last couple of frames hit Blind Pass, pulled off back towards the northwest. So Blind Pass got a really good thumping there roughly 15, maybe even 10 minutes ago, because in a matter of 2 radar scans, it went from just windy with light rain to getting pounded, and you can see all the lightning in there. Lauren, if we could go ahead and hit one of the wide views. I know a lot of people really love to see the wide view to get an idea of where the storm's going and what those rain bands look like, but occasionally, as this storm is beginning to make landfall, we're going to go in community by community and show you what's happening, because I know a lot of you are curious and just kind of wondering where the worst is at, and eventually hoping for the end.
And Trent, I kind of just want to clarify, even though these communities, the Lee County Islands, are dealing with the eye wall, it doesn't make it a landfall just yet. So there's a specific definition when it comes to landfall. I don't know, because you're closer to the wall than me. You have to get to that center first.
Yeah, so the way the National Hurricane Center defines a landfall, and this is where verbiage and definitions kind of get in the way of an overall message, the center of a tropical cyclone, in this case a Category 4 hurricane, moves over land. So right now we're beginning to see the eye wall, but not a technical landfall, if you will, and that will determine a couple of things. Once it does make a landfall, then we get a picture of how this donut-shaped damaging core of Hurricane Ian will impact the coastline, because we're going to have several areas impacted. To the south, where you've got the right side of circulation, and that's where you get the water piling up on the south side. You've also got the worst of the winds on that core, and in the last couple of frames, it looks like it's not quite as intense on this southeasterly side. But if you look at the overall loop over the past hour, watch how fast some of these vortices just whip their way around the eye wall, and just like that, they make a complete lap back around. So as you look here at the radar imagery, we are watching a landfalling hurricane, and just so you guys know, we are wall to wall, and we are going to assume, even though we have lost power temporarily here at our facility, we do have some backup generators, and even though you may see us look a little different at the moment due to the loss of some studio lighting, we are going to assume that you can still hear us. We're going to assume that you can still get the overall message. Right now, we are looking at a live shot here. You can see the Gulf of Mexico as it continues to churn up and continue to push that storm surge on shore. And Lauren, that's one thing I want to check the 11 o'clock advisory about here, because the storm surge values all morning long continued to go up. At one point, we were looking 12 feet of storm surge, which was bad enough.
Then it was 16 was the next
and then it went up to 18. And that's when we got that statement from the National Hurricane Center that we were now dealing with here with life-threatening storm surge. And that is going to be one thing today that we're going to see up and down the coastline. So as we take this live look here out at the Gulf of Mexico, you could just see the amount of wave action that these winds are continuing to call. Right now, we've got a radar loop up, Lauren.
Yep.
And I believe this is back from one of our backup facilities here, and you can continue to see it move on through. If we could just stay on the radar, the backup graphics here, are we able to take our in-house graphics?
I think, yeah, I was going to say, I think the people controlling it should be able to help us with that in just a moment, Trent, so we're going to get to that. So one of the things that you were just talking about, Trent, was going to be the storm surge, and that was because we are dealing with it now, but that will be a threat continuing throughout all day today.
Yeah.
That is not something that's going to just happen and then it's going to be done. I do hear our producers and our directors giving us some direction. So really quickly, could you repeat that for me? Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
And ideally, if we could, I would love to take our in-house source, and I don't even know if that's an option here at the moment. I'm not sure the switchover process there, but it appears we still have our graphics here in the studio based on our Weather One machine, whoever's hearing me. So if we can control that switchover and get our graphics back.
And our viewers are letting us know that they still hear you.
They still
Okay,
hear us.
good,
Okay.
good.
So right now, as we are looking at our radar right now here in the studio, we are watching the eye wall move on shore in Sanibel and Captiva. So as the winds are picking up, we are just like you. We're in the middle of this hurricane together. So we have lost power temporarily, waiting for some backup generators to supply us with some different equipment here. But we made sure we were prepared to get the basics, and it appears we are getting some of that power back on here.
Okay.
So hopefully we can switch back. But looking at the radar right now, Lauren, North
zoom out just a
Captiva
little
Island continues to just get hammered on the fringe of that eye wall as it continues to move on shore. And Amy, I know you're monitoring social media, you and Chris. If you start to get messages that we become more visible again, we'll get right back to it. And go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, so before we get over to our anchors with their questions, it sounds like we do have our John Barron. He's kind of been all over the place between DeSoto and Charlotte counties today. He has an update on conditions while we get everything back up and running. John,